Well, good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm very passionate about small to medium enterprises. As I said, I think who saw me speak last year? Who was here? I hope you remember all the jokes because they are still the same. I said last year the small to medium enterprise in this country counts for something like 95% of the employment in this country. It counts for 75% of all taxes paid to our revenue, and actually the small to medium enterprise is the thing that is holding our economy together. Well, that's nice. You've moved into the corner, so you're not immediately behind me. And Peter's right. They said, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, I'm going to review the year, what's happened in the macro economy and how that will impact smaller businesses. And I sat there with a big piece of white paper and my daughter's red crayon, and I started to make a list of all the major economic events that I thought did impact small to medium enterprises and what that impact might be. So I started with my list. And the first thing I wrote down was the collapse of the euro, or almost the collapse of the euro, and the Greek debt crisis and how that was impacting local businesses. Then I went on to the banking crisis and the restriction of funding and borrowing in this country, which is strangling, I think, small businesses certainly getting going. There's the unemployment situation. We've got a very odd employment structure nowadays, and what's happened is that very young people and very old people are suffering unemployment, but the people in the middle are not doing so badly, and that's quite unusual. And then we've got this whole mass of the economy that is like walking through treacle, and that's interest rates. It's things like property prices. There's this whole wodge of our financial life in this country has become bogged down in staticness, isn't it? It's not going in and not doing anything. We've got this very weird, was it a double dip or wasn't it thing? We had the quarter's economic growth, followed by a retraction, followed by an economic growth again, and it seems to be very volatile, very sensitive to economic movement. So that was kind of weird. And then we had a really weird general election, didn't we, where nobody really won. And in fact, we're still not sure who won or what they're doing about it. So we've had loads and loads of really odd events in the past 12 months. And of course, then we ended with a wedding, which was very nice, wasn't it? And I thought about all these odd events that I've got written down on my piece of paper. And I thought, well, how are those events impacting local businesses? And how can we prepare ourselves to be better prepared the next time any of these odd events came along? And I looked at the list, and as I said, they're the weirdest bunch of events you've ever seen, quite unlike anything we've ever come across before. And I thought, well, even if they did happen exactly the same again, would the impact be the same? And the more I thought about it, the more I realised that there is no standard impact on small to medium businesses of these macroeconomic activities. And that's because we all react differently and cope differently with every economic or macro circumstance. And for anyone in this room that has suffered a bad business year or has made losses or has really struggled this year, there'll be other people in this room, there'll be somebody else in this room that's had a good year and that they're operating within the same circumstances. Is that true? So there will be people that have had a really tough year and there'll be those people that have had a fantastically positive year. So it occurs to me that the economic environment isn't really so much about what has happened, but it's more about how you reacted to it, how you coped with it, how you profited from it in some circumstances, and how determined and motivated you were to make your particular business work. And that led me to thinking about Richard Branson. You all know Richard Branson? Yeah. Wants to go to the moon in a balloon. He's nice and normal, isn't he? Unusual guy. Nonetheless, a fantastic business person. And if you allow me, I'd like to paraphrase. I will exaggerate a little bit. I want to paraphrase his early start in business. You're up for that? Okay, his story goes something like this. Well, I was at school, I was 17, I've got dyslexia, so I wasn't very good at very much, but the one thing I did like doing was writing a school magazine. And me and my mate, we created this school magazine where we wrote silly articles about the teachers, and unfortunately the headmaster found out about this magazine and closed us down, and that particular business failed. Nonetheless, when I did leave school, I liked the idea of the old magazine thing, so me and my mate, we left school, we rented these really plush offices in Knightsbridge, and we decided we're going to make magazines as a business. Unfortunately, me and my mate spent all the time writing the magazine. We never sold anything, we never had any income, the rent was due on the plush offices, and that business failed. So what we did, we rented slightly smaller offices around the corner in Fulham, and we've worked out that we can't do everything ourselves. So now we've got me writing, him writing, we've got some one other external writer in. Unfortunately, even though the three of us were writing, none of us yet had cracked how to sell the darn magazine, and the rent was due on the offices in Fulham, and that business failed. But nonetheless, we've learned, and we've then gone down market, and we're now renting office space from his dad. But we've learned lessons. We've now got him writing, me writing, and we've got external writers. And we found some advertisers, so we can get advertising income in our magazine. Unfortunately, however, the advertisers weren't very keen on stumping up their money because we didn't have any subscribers or nobody was buying the magazine. His dad still wanted rent for the office space we had, so unfortunately that business failed. We then moved into my mum's shed. And we worked out we had to sell this magazine, and we came up with the idea of subscriptions, just like your treasurer was talking about there, about subscriptions. So we've now got me writing, him writing, we've got some advertisers, we've now got this idea of subscriptions, you know, we're in my mum's shed. Unfortunately, subscribers didn't want to give us any money. We couldn't work out how to get subscribers. My mum got fed up with us in her shed, and that business failed. We then moved into the basement of one of our mates, where we only had to contribute towards the electricity. And we've now cracked it. We've worked out how to get subscriptions. I'm writing, he's writing, we've got advertisers, we're going to get subscribers, and in order to entice the subscribers, we are going to give them free stuff. So we go to France in a van. This is the first time Richard Branson was arrested, by the way. We go to France in a van, and we pick up loads of cheap stuff that we're going to stick on the front of these magazines. And I don't know if you remember the story, but they didn't pay the VAT on the stuff they brought in. I don't know if any of you, this is a true story. They went to France in a van and came back with a van load of stuff that they're going to stick on the front of these magazines. Unfortunately, that nobody wanted the free stuff that was on the magazines, so I'm writing, he's writing, we've got advertisers, we've got other writers, we've now got some subscribers, we've now given them free stuff on the front of that magazine, but unfortunately we didn't have enough income coming in. The mate finally got fed up with us being in his basement, and that business failed. In desperation, my mate saw that there was an empty shop at the end of Oxford Street that was being let on a monthly basis before redevelopment. So what we decided to do was to rip all the stuff, the free stuff, off of the magazines, because we've got them piled up in the basement here because nobody's bought them. We've ripped the free stuff off the magazines and we've put it back in the van, and we've gone down to this shop at the end of Oxford Street with it. And that free stuff happened to be about 2 million copies of Tubular Bells. That shop at the end of Oxford Street was the first ever Virgin megastore, and badang, success. Interesting story, I'm sure you'll agree. And the moral of the story is very easy to see. It's about persistence, isn't it? It's about personal persistence and keeping going. But it's also about flexibility, and it's about learning. He kept changing everything. He changed the product, he changed the approach, he changed the sales, he changed the income stream, he changed the product offering. In the end, he even ditched the darn product. and threw away the magazine and went for the freebie. And he then went back to the magazine later on. And the story is really about understanding that you've got to do whatever it takes to make the business work. And then when the business is working, you can go back and pick up the other stuff. And of course, he's gone back into magazines and a variety of other stuff later on. You can also hear the cost control experience. We rented plush offices, we rented down market offices, we rented a shed, we went into the basement, blah, blah, blah. And you can hear that actually cost control was a really big learning for him. And we've all made the mistake, certainly when we first start in business, we put together this plush package that we go to a bank manager with, and they used to lend us money on the basis of this. They don't do it anymore. And I think that's really a good thing, because it makes us concentrate on what's important. And what's important when you first get going is the idea of marginal costing and paying just for one thing and getting enough off the ground to sell one thing, and then you use the money to invest in the next thing. I much, much prefer the idea of organic and natural growth than going for this big wham at one end. Because I think when you do get a lot of funding and you start a business that way, you tend to spend far too much money and time and effort on designing the business card rather than concentrating on the product. And I'm sure I've told you this story about the hat shop. Have I told you the story about the hat shop? Somebody came to me, she said, we've got a great idea, a business idea, because I do sort of mentoring with certain people. And she said, we've got this great idea for a hat shop. I said, oh, that's great, tell me about the hat shop. She said, well, you'll never guess what, I'm going into business with my mate Julie, and we found this website where you can design business cards, and she's going to have like a straw bow tie, and I'm going to have an opera hat, and it's going to be like our business card. And I said, yeah, Anne? And she said, and then we've been onto the internet, and we found these desks, and they're like triangular and long, so if you turn them on one side, they look like witches' hats. And I said, yeah, and she said, and then we found these lace paper baskets. And I was standing there thinking, and actually I was doing this work with James Caan. I work with James Caan on the Entrepreneur Academy. And I was looking at this woman thinking, tell me about the frigging hat. Because that's all I'm interested in. Sell one hat, otherwise you don't have a business. And unfortunately people, certainly when they first get started, they concentrate on the bins and the desks and the office and the business cards. Just sell a frigging hat, will you? And then we know whether we've got a business or not. And people do tend to get bogged down in that. The thing is this. Even if we're in a flat economy or maybe a recession, and we're not sure yet what we're in at the moment, it's a statistical fact that there are more millionaires created in recessionary times than there are in boom times. Have you read that? Have you heard that before? There are more millionaires created during recessionary times than there ever are during boom times. And if you think about it, it's very easy to understand why that might be. Because any idiot can make money in a boom time, because customers are spending money. Everything's easy, there's lots of opportunities around. Customers feel free to spend, and frankly, you don't have to be very good in business to be profitable during a boom time. And I always think how easy it is to be profitable then.